Hello, dear friends. This is the introduction to 30 Days of Inner Journey, Your Thought, Your Life. And Carlos Diaz and I will be reading to you the book Thought and Life by the Spirit Emmanuel, psychographed by Chico Xavier. We're going to be reading this for 30 days, making comments. For now, we're going to be recording it before we stream it to you. And if you have any questions or any comments, feel free to write it down here in our YouTube or Facebook page. And then in the next one, we're going to be addressing your questions. We hope you enjoy. This is going to be the introduction that Carlos is now going to read for us.
Hello, everybody. So let's get to it. Introduction. Thought and life. We were asked by a friend on our spiritual plane whether we have a book that could be adapted to suit the needs of people on earth. A few pages that would speak to the spirit about problems of a spiritual nature, something light and breathe, a synopsis of lofty principles to guide one's journey upon earth. This request brought to mind a simple series of spoken directives we use here in our work, instructions given to our schools of regeneration, to those preparing for a new birth during their span of existence between the grave and the cradle. These are humble notations that stem from the mind, as do flowers from the soil without, however, belonging to the garden that harbors them. These are born of God's goodness, which creates the sun and the land, the water and the air, the fertilizer and the wind, so as to produce color, form, beauty, and perfume. Therefore, we have our simple basic book adapted where necessary to the fields of human effort. Thought and life is what we have called in the spiritual world, and it is the same title that we offer to our struggling fellow beings, temporarily interned in the physical sphere. Its purpose is to inform you yet again that our thought process being a reflection of ourselves, which creates the kind of life we lead. Until one day, through the millennia, we shall identify ourselves with the infinite wisdom and infinite love that constitutes the thought and life of our Father. Emmanuel, Pedro Leopoldo, Brazil, February 11th, 1958. So this is a beautiful book. It's a very small book, as you can see, but beautiful all the way around and deep. The chapters are short, 2 pages normally, but very deep, like I said before, and extremely beautiful and important to all of us. But we have to definitely think about it before we read, and especially after we read it. And Vanessa is going to go through more in depth with all of us.
Yes, dear friend, as Carlos was reading to us the introduction, very important. Often people don't read the preface of a book, but it's so important, especially the Spiritist books. Because in the preface, we're really going to prepare ourselves, set the tone for the book. What is this book all about? But we can't forget that this book attracted our attention first and foremost when we've become acquainted with the correspondence between Chico Xavier and Salim Haddad. They founded together the first Spiritist center in the United States in North Carolina, the Christian Spiritist Center. And it's quite interesting because Haddad, he translated this book, which is titled in Portuguese Pensamento e Vida, and Chico Xavier allowed him to publish the translation. We have the original contract with us when he released the copyright, and recently in 2012, the British Union of Spiritist Societies, through Elsa Rossi and Janet Duncan and many other friends, with also the preface by the daughter, one of the daughters of Haddad, Edwina Haddad, they published this book in the United Kingdom. If you want to buy this book, right now it's available at the bookstore of the Spiritist Group of New York, sgny.org. So in this introduction, we've come to know many things already, very important for us to transform our lives. These are 30 days of therapeutic journey. We can't forget these books were written for true therapy inside of us. It was written in 1958, but it's never going to become outdated because these are scientific foundations for the spirit. They don't change. It's like gravity. Gravity exists. Whomever wrote about gravity to date, it's the law of nature. This is about laws of nature. And Emmanuel says here quite clearly that he kindly sharing with us this opportunity of having some guidelines for our lives. And he says things that are quite interesting. In the spiritual realm, there are schools of regeneration to prepare those for a new birth during their span of existence between grade and cradle. So two elements here for us. First, the fact that when somebody is in the spiritual realm discarnated, they are not idle necessarily. They are not wandering spirits. They can be engaged. There are schools. If you read the book No Solar and many others, even those written by Andrew Jackson Davis before Spiritism came along, and many others, Emmanuel Swedenborg, forerunners of the Spiritist thought in the world, we've come to know that there are spiritual colonies. But you think there have always been spiritual colonies on the earth? No. I was talking to our friend Adriano Barbo, president of the Spiritist, the Mount Vernon Spiritist Center, and he was bringing to our awareness, which is true, that when the earth was created, there were no spiritual colonies yet. Of course not. Not on the earth crust. They could have been like way above to give sustenance to the illuminated spirits who are doing this work. But the ones that were here in the earth crust, like No Solar, for example, they were created way, way, way after the earth received its first human beings. The ones that were already at the human level. We're talking about colonies that are coming closer to the crust of the earth. Okay? So we come to know that now there exists beautiful, beautiful, beautiful spiritual works done there. Hospitals, universities, and schools of the gospel, like Humberto de Campos shared in the introduction of the book Good News. And here we have schools of regeneration. But he says these are schools that are preparing people to reincarnate before they are born, either born or reborn on the earth. They prepare us. So, first question to us, do you think you were prepared in a school of regeneration? Do you feel it before you came here? Oh, Vanessa, I don't remember, but what do you feel? Were you prepared? Very likely, we were prepared before you came here. We were given opportunities to take these courses. And why are they called School of Regeneration? If we go to the Gospel according to Spiritism, we learn about, in chapter 3, about the different planets, different worlds that exist in the universe created by God. And we learn about the evolution of these worlds, and one of them is a world of regeneration or regenerative worlds. And the earth is becoming a world of regeneration. So now it belongs to the state, the level of our evolution, that we actually focus on how to be better. Regeneration, what is regeneration? It's to generate again, but generate something again in a better way. So we are given another opportunity to be born, and in this reborning experience, rebirth experience, we do it right. Yeah, so now we're redressing the old conditionings by adopting new conditionings. Before I continue, do you think or do you feel you have a central theme in regards to the development of your virtues in this reincarnation that you need to pay more attention to? This is a therapeutic journey. There's no use of reading this book and discussing it philosophically without feeling it. Let me give you an example. Amália Domingos Soler, in her book, Hechos que Prueban, and in Portuguese, Reencarnação e Vida, it's not yet in English, she talks about a mom who didn't understand the romantic choice of her child. So she kind of killed the man, asked some of her henchmen to get rid of him, and he was killed. And then her daughter discarnated. She forgave the mother, but then she reincarnated asking to be taming her feelings regarding her domination of her life, of family life. How many of us feel so attached, feel that we need to manipulate our family members, and sometimes with the name of love, but it's not true. We're simply creating this attachment and this oppression, sometimes in the name of love. So what would be your central theme in this reincarnation? Is it the taming of vanity or patience? Be more patient, be more tolerant, be kinder in your thoughts and feelings. What is it? We need to know. Right. Now, Emmanuel says that in these schools of regeneration, they use materials, books, and he says he chose one guideline. They have a workbook there, and it contains these principles, but they are light and brief. So he brings to us here a synopsis of it. He says, a simple series of spoken directives we here use in our work. So this book is as if we were downloading from the spiritual realm. Yes, all works of goodness first happen in the spiritual realm and then in the material plane. So nothing that we do good comes from the material plane first. So no good ideas come from our mind before coming from the spiritual realm. Whether good ideas for material progress or spiritual progress, they first come from the spiritual realm. And Emmanuel is kindly saying to us how humble he is to share with us. He's not claiming it's his. He's saying, I'm sharing with you. It's as if he is downloading here through Chico Xavier the material that is already there in the spiritual realm using before we're here. But these humble notations that stem from the mind, they belong to the garden that harbors them. And he says it's a simple basic book that is necessary to the field of human effort. But why is this book here? He says thought and life. With our thought, we create our life. So if you and I, any of us, do not like the life we are attracting to us, we need to think, what kind of thoughts am I having that are creating such predispositions? What is it? We need to know. We need to know. What is it? And you know, this is a universal truth. It doesn't belong to Spiritism, because in this book, Silence by Thich Nhat Hanh, a Nobel Peace Prize that has been doing a great job, in one of the very paragraphs of the book, he says something that goes hand in hand with what we're going to learn with Emmanuel in this simple book that exists in the spiritual realm. He says we are our thoughts, But we are at the same time much more than just our thoughts. We are also our feelings, perceptions, wisdom, happiness, and love. But, he says, thinking may be seen as a kind of fruit. Some kinds of fruit are nourishing, others are not. If we have a lot of worry, fear, and anguish, that is a very fertile ground for thinking that is completely useless, non-productive, and harmful. The universal truth spoken through Spiritism, Buddhism, because it's the truth of God on the earth. And in the last paragraph of this beautiful preface by Emmanuel, we learn, thought and life is what we have called it in the spiritual world, and it is with the same title that we offer it to our struggling fellow beings. So it's for us. We need to have mind over matter to change our world. It's not worthwhile to keep thinking worries, fears, concerns, criticism. It's creating a muddy environment around us, so much so that the other day we were in Washington, D.C., and Mentor Joseph was so kind. He said, can you please help this homeless friend? He was using crutches. So we brought the food to a nearby bench where he could sit down and actually eat his meal. And he started speaking to us, saying, and he was like very, very nagging. And we're not judging, but I understand the reasons. But Mentor Joseph said, pay attention to his thinking process. He was saying, but other people do this, and other people do that, and they do this, and they call me this, and they call me that, and they don't understand me, and da-da-da. And Mentor Joseph said, you see, that kind of attitude brought him to homelessness. He lost friends and family members, was on his own. He's not here because he is not given an opportunity, physically speaking, materially speaking. He brought himself here because he created this muddy environment of criticism and judgmental nature to everything and everyone around him, including himself. It's impossible, he said, to criticize others and not criticize ourselves. If we're in the habit of constantly criticizing others, you bet at some point during the day, we're also going to do self-criticism, and that doesn't help us because we're divine creatures. So Emmanuel is telling us quite clearly here, it's the purpose of the book is to inform you yet again that it is our thought process being a reflection of ourselves which creates the kind of life we lead. Until one day, through the millennia, we shall identify ourselves with the infinite wisdom and the infinite love that constitutes the thought and life of our Father. Emmanuel is reminding us of something that André Luiz, through Chico Xavier, and Valdo Vieira, in the book Mechanisms of Mediumship, yet to be published in English, Mecanismos da Mediunidade, already in Portuguese and Spanish and other languages, but English. He says that our thoughts are immersed in God's thoughts. That's the nature of the co-creator. So when we think anything negative, we're using the clay of the loving thoughts of God that are given to us and are creating a shape that is discordant with the loving nature of the clay of love that God has given us. And we're going to suffer because that disturbs us. And the day Emmanuel says we learn to align our thoughts constantly with the divine love, we are going to feel much better and we'll never experience again the sufferings, because suffering comes when we're not aligned with the thought of our Creator. We're going to stop here today because this is just an introduction. We await for your comments. We await for your questions so we can continue tomorrow on our 30-day journey, inner journey, Your thought is your life. Thank you.